Hey, welcome to the Wealth Guardians radio show. I'm your host, Doug Ray, and I really do appreciate you spending some of your weekend with us. Bryce Payne, of course, is here with me in the studio. Good morning, Bryce. How you doing?
I'm still above ground, Doug. How are you?
Amen to that one. I'm doing great.
Good to hear it.
Yep, football season is here, and, finally it's turning into fall, so I'm ready.
So excited. I can watch the Broncos lose another game after game this year. Can't wait.
Well, for those of you who just have turned into the Wealth Guardian show, Ray Financial and the Wealth Guardians, we're a local independent firm that works with folks 7 to 10 years from retirement, as all folks that are already retired. And most people don't know how to turn their retirement savings accounts into a steady flow of income once they're not drawing that paycheck. I focus my practice on retirement income planning. And history shows us there's two powerful truths when it comes to finances in retirement. Number one, what got you to retirement's not necessarily going to get you through retirement. And number two, losses mean more than gains in retirement once you aren't drawing that paycheck.
Those are two very good truths, Doug, as always. And I want to remind everyone out there that your firm, the firm, practices as fiduciaries, which means we are required to make recommendations that are solely in your best interest, not ours. And I want to remind you that not all advisors out there, in fact, a majority of them, do not practice as fiduciaries.
And as always, before we get started, I want to salute our military, our first responders, their family members. Thank you for everything you do and the sacrifices that you make for us, our community, and our country, and especially this week since we observed the 18th anniversary of 9/11.
Absolutely, and especially to the families out there. We know you sacrifice a lot as well. Well, Doug, like you said, it's football season. You're a East Carolina grad, so go Pirates. You're also a Green Bay Packers fan. I'm a CU grad, so go Buffaloes, and a Broncos fan, so that's my woes and worries. But speaking on football, Andrew Luck, as you said, abruptly retired from the NFL last week at an early age. And even though this was shocking to the football world, many working Americans choose to retire sooner than they originally planned as well. And if you're out there and you're considering this option, you want to know if you're retiring early is a mistake or not. Well, in today's show, we're going to dive into some important considerations before you pull that trigger, because sometimes there isn't any turning back, Doug.
Oh, you're right, but Bryce, you left out one important thing.
Uh-oh.
I'm also a Carolina Panthers fan.
Oh, well, that's okay. Well, I am as well.
All righty. Now that we got that straight.
That's my fallback NFC team right there.
You know, I think it's safe to say that every working person's ultimate goal is some point to retire. And for some, it may come earlier than they originally thought. And that may be a good thing, depending upon whether it's your choice or not. Unfortunately, in the past several years, especially during the Great Recession, I had to help a lot of people who retired and it wasn't their choice. That can be more difficult. But you need to make sure you got a solid plan in place for retirement before you actually do it. Now, I'm sure Andrew Luck had some good planning. And if he didn't, the millions he has in the bank, that's going to help. But most people don't have multiple millions of dollars, so planning has to be done before you make a critical decision to retire, especially retiring early in this day and age. And while most families don't need millions of dollars to retire successfully, you must address some important areas before you make that decision so it won't turn out to be a big mistake. So if you ask the Colts fans whether Andrew Luck's decision to retire is a mistake or not, they're not going to be focused on finances. They're focused on football. But for you and I, addressing early retirement will be based on finances, and you need to have all your bases covered.
You absolutely do, Doug. And you alluded to the most important factor, whether you're considering early retirement or retirement in any time frame. And the first mistake many people make is retiring without a coherent and organized plan.
Yeah, Bryce, I like to use this analogy a lot. You know, a lot of our clients, they enjoy traveling once they retire. And,
right.
Of course, there's a story of Charlie and Carol, and they've been trekking the country in their RV for the last 3 or so years since their retirements. And a lot of our clients, they're taking their grandkids to Disney or on a family cruise or something like that. And those are usually pretty involved trips, and they wouldn't even think of starting out without a detailed plan to figure out timing, costs, what happens if a trip to the ER is needed. But it's no different for retirement. And too many variables are out there regarding retirement to jump in without having a good, solid plan. Now, I'm sure Andrew Luck had a plan. He's a smart guy. He may be a little different from most because he's made tens of millions of dollars over his career, but he still has to have a plan, especially if he never decides to work again. At 29 years old, he could be in retirement for over 50 years. So he needs to have a plan no matter how much money he has.
That's a long retirement.
You ain't kidding. I imagine he'll get a gig as a broadcaster or something.
Yeah.
So, whatever. But, most people, when they decide to retire early, they don't have the multi-millions of dollars, so it's even more important to have a rock-solid plan that's going to cover all areas of retirement like income planning, tax planning, health care, legal docs, and, of course, proper wealth management. Obviously, income planning is very important. Everything you have saved must be able to provide you with an income for the rest of your life. And there are very strategic ways to accomplish this. Tax planning, now that's huge. Taxes don't go away in retirement, and you have to know how to be able to draw from your nest egg in the most tax-efficient way and limit taxes as much as you can during your retirement years. A big item you have to address if considering early retirement is health care. You can't get on Medicare until you're 65 years old. And then buying your own insurance plan before you reach 65 if you retire, that could be prohibitively costly. So even after you go on Medicare, there's a lot of additional expenses that are going to come up regarding health care during your retirement. And that you'll have to pay for because a lot of them are just not covered by Medicare. Legal documents, they come into play. You need the right documents in order to protect your retirement plan in the best way. And of course, you need to have the proper wealth management in place because, again, if you're going to retire early, you have to make sure your money lasts as long as you do. And that could be for a very long time in retirement. So having a coordinated and organized plan in place is very critical in order to retire early.
Yeah, absolutely is. And Doug, you made a point of saying not only do you have to plan, but you have to have a plan that is coordinated. And let's explain that more specifically. A lot of times you may have a lot of different people you work with in the general category of finances. So let's go through them. Maybe you have a life insurance agent, and maybe you have a different person for home and auto insurance, okay? Possibly you have an advisor or a stockbroker that helps you with growing your money, all right? Maybe you have an attorney that helps you with the legal documents and matters like wills and trusts. And then you very well may have a tax guy that does your taxes. So there could easily be a lot of different people that you rely on, but it's very possible that everyone is doing their very own thing, and there's no real coordination going on there. And once you get into retirement years, your plan is more effective if it's coordinated and working together. Now, let's give an example. Your income plan has to incorporate your insurance plan, and your whole retirement plan needs to be situated the correct way for tax planning, and that depends on what everything else is doing. So that's why once you get close to your retirement years, you should really start looking for a retirement professional who can make sure your plan is working together in the most effective and most efficient way possible so that you can get the most out of your retirement plan. Now, Doug, an RIC professional is just that, right?
Well, yeah, Bryce, it is. That extra designation, the Retirement Income Certified Professional, that one gets from study at the American College is a real detailed drill down in all aspects of retirement. I went and got mine about, I guess, it's been 5, 6, 7 years ago now. I can't even remember.
And you were one of the first ones to get it, too.
I was one of the first 50 in the country to get the RICP, and now you're working on it, and you're about a third of the way through it. I think it's a great education in everything retirement. And if you call yourself a retirement planner, you need some extra education that's above and beyond what we typically get in the financial, advisory business.
Absolutely.
And so what are your thoughts? What have you learned so far in the RICP program?
Well, Doug, I know you've been in the field, the overall field, for 30 years. I've been in it for 10, and I've been focusing on retirement planning now for close to 4. And here I thought that I've taken the first class now. There's 3 classes. And I thought that I had most of what the first class would cover under my belt. But I tell you what, I had to study like a dog for 5 months just to be able to pass that first test. So there are some really valuable tools that an RICP graduate or a certificate earner would have, that if you've got that person in your corner in retirement planning, you've got some real assets in your corner. I can't even imagine trying to do retirement planning on your own with just, even with a normal professional, let alone a retirement specialist. So there are a lot of things that I'm learning that, and I'm sure the next 2 courses are going to be even filling my head even more so.
Well, you're right. That credential takes a lot of academic rigor, and honestly, I'm glad it's that way. So again, folks, you've got to put a plan together, make sure that plan works from all aspects. It really helps to have that retirement professional that can do the tax planning, income planning, Social Security planning, the insurance work that can help you in all these areas and make sure that all the areas in your plans come together and are coordinated.
Pension planning as well goes in there?
Absolutely. So also, we do a fact-finding process. It's comprehensive. We've talked about our 4-meeting process before, and I'm not going to go into that kind of detail right now. But there's a lot of stuff that has to be considered in putting together an overall plan. And we give you a written retirement plan. That is your roadmap to a successful retirement.
And it's a 4-meeting process as well. So it's not just we meet with you once and here's your plan. This is a real in-depth discovery and uncovering of facts that goes over multiple meetings, so that when we put that written plan together, it is cohesive, it is coordinated, and it's in depth. There's no 2 ways about it, Doug. I can't imagine somebody entering into retirement without having some professional help and having something in writing at the end to make sure that you are not making mistakes that can't be undone as you go into this retirement stage of your life. This would be a perfect time to mention that we help our clients retire the job and keep the paycheck. And as you started off the show, Doug, for listeners who are 5 to 7 years from retirement and they want to confirm that they're making the best decisions for retirement, we do offer that no-cost, no-obligation second opinion that we've been talking about to make sure that they are indeed on the right path to retirement. We can be reached 336-391-3409. You can also visit us on the website, www.thewealthguardians.com. But if you'd like to have one of those appointments set up with us, give us a call and get that put on the calendar. No cost, no obligation. It just takes a little bit of your time. So, folks, we're up against a quick break here. Stay tuned, and when we come back, we'll dive back into plans that you need to have in place if you're considering retiring early. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Wealth Guardians radio show. This morning we've been discussing some important factors to consider if you're contemplating early retirement. Doug, I would venture to say that these are important no matter when you're planning on retirement, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the foundational piece of a coordinated retirement plan are important whether you're retiring at 45, 65, or 29, like our buddy Andrew Luck. So, you could live easily, even if you retire at 65, 20, 25 years in retirement. So planning and strategies to make your money last at least that long are paramount. And if retiring early, the chances of being in retirement for 30 or 40 years are quite likely, and that means money must, and I mean must, last a long time. So that's going to put a lot of stress on a retirement portfolio, because not making any more income and not adding to your retirement nest egg through those contributions you've been used to putting into those 401k plans, that stops. So now the nest egg has to provide and work for you instead of you working for your money. You may have to do this for a very, very long time. And make sure your retirement plan is set up and is sufficient enough to be able to produce your desired income stream for as long as you live. And that income stream, in all probability, has to be set up to pay you more each year to keep up with inflation. So not only does it have to last a long time, it has to produce an increasing income stream to keep up with inflation and the cost of living.
So, Doug, a critical point is the name of the game changes when you retire as far as the strategy goes. So during working years, you're in more of an accumulation type of game when you're trying to accumulate and save money to be able to retire for the rest of your life. That's the accumulation phase. But once you retire, you need to shift to the security and distribution phase. And you can't necessarily be really aggressive with your retirement savings because it has to last you for a long period of time, like you're saying. You aren't accumulating money any longer. You're relying on that nest egg to provide for you now. So your strategy has to be different. It needs to be in a position where it can still grow and make money, but the number one priority at this point is to make sure you never take a big hit in the market and take a huge loss. That hasn't been your focus as an investor for the last 40 years or so, but it should be now. Remember, losses count more than gains, and it takes a long time to make up for those big losses. Now, you have to make sure you avoid those big hits, like I'm saying. I'm not talking about small hits, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8%. Okay, that's going to happen at any time. And if you have money invested in the market, there is no way any money manager in the world can prevent those short-term corrections or prevent market volatility in the short term in that single-digit range. That's just going to happen. But there are ways to prevent the big hits, like what happened in 2008, 2009. You need to make sure that your game plan changes, just like the Colts will have to do now that Luck is retired and they have a new quarterback. They're going to have to change some things up to adapt to a new quarterback to make the team as good as possible. And you know, the same thing goes for your situation. If you retire early, your money will have to last all that much longer. And you'll have to make some changes to your strategy in order to make sure your plan is set up the right way when you're out of that accumulation phase and before entering the distribution phase of life.
You know, Bryce, we talked about the RICP program right before the break. That's, again, the Retirement Income Certified Professional. I think that designation, that the work body in that designation is focused primarily on what is the difference between the growth period of your life, now the retirement or distribution period of your life. And that RICP is a big drill down on how to make this money last and turn it into incredible income that's going to outpace inflation.
And Doug, you know, I'll mention, you know, we work with people who have worked with other advisors throughout their lives. It still startles me how many advisors don't even get the difference between the accumulation phase of life and the preservation and distribution phase of life, let alone investors who don't have any background in the field.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, you know, I think it's worth mentioning the folly of considering retiring early and thinking you can rely on the growth of your investments because they've averaged 8, 9, 10% over the last 5 and 6 years. Buyer beware. Don't do this. I highly encourage you not to make a decision based on the way the market's performed over the last 5 or 6 years. It's not normal growth. We're going to get back to our normal cycles of up years and down years with a lot less average rate of return over the next 10 years than you've seen in the last 10. Don't go into retirement thinking, okay, market's solid now. I can make 8, 9, 10, 12% a year on my money and maintain my retirement plan. No, you can't do it. Don't do this because it's just not going to happen. And if you're going to take a lot of risk to try to get that type of return, that can really become a devastating situation, and it can ruin your retirement nest egg very quickly. Make sure that when you go into retirement, not making decisions based on the average rate of return the stock market's produced in these last 5 and 7 years, because it's not going to keep up with the rate of return over a long time in retirement, say for the next 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, another point worth mentioning is that while you're adjusting your overall strategy, Doug, it's an opportune time to get your assets in order as well.
Absolutely. During the overall process of planning for retirement and adjusting the strategy for distribution versus accumulation, it's time to evaluate the different assets and get rid of the ones that won't help you in retirement. Folks, this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say the phrase of what got you to retirement is not necessarily going to get you through retirement. For example, maybe you're hanging on to a piece of property you bought a long time ago and thought you're going to build on it later on down the line. or you have some stock in a portfolio not producing much dividend income anymore, and you don't want to sell it because you'd have to pay capital gains taxes. So what you have to do is get all these assets to work in the most proper and effective way in your retirement years. You know, with that piece of property you probably aren't going to use, maybe it makes sense to go ahead and sell it and put that money to work for you in a retirement plan. And if that stock isn't giving much income, maybe you should put that money somewhere else that could probably give you more solid income stream over time. Okay, look, there may be some cost to doing these transactions, but don't let that deter you as long as the costs are reasonable. Again, it's going to benefit you to get your house in order. Get things cleaned up, organized, and put in the most effective and prosperous position for you going forward. So analyze your assets and make sure that everything that you do have are the right things for your own retirement.
All right. And Doug, the last factor we have time to discuss today that needs to be considered before retiring early is the tax factor. And this is a big one. Taxes do not go away in retirement, folks. They can be minimized if you have the proper retirement plan and have been saving the proper way, or you've been in retirement for a few years and been working with the right retirement professional to get you into tax-free positions. But most people aren't at that point. You need to have a plan around taxes, plain and simple. Don't think Andrew Luck doesn't have to worry about the tax man too much just because he has a lot of money in his bank account.
Yeah, taxes are definitely not going to go away for Andrew Luck, and they're probably not going to go away for you and me either. You know, I've said on this show so many times in the past, the tax system is set up to tax you heavily in retirement if you're not careful. You've been taught to save on a tax-deferred basis for retirement. In other words, you contribute money on a tax-deductible basis in your retirement plans through your employer, such as your 401k or your IRAs, and those monies grow tax-free for you, or tax-deferred, I should say, until you retire and you start taking money out of the accounts, and then they're fully taxable. Now, the problem is the taxable income is probably going to cause your Social Security income to be taxed. And that could be up to 85% of your Social Security income could be taxed at whatever your tax rate is. Your pension income, that could be taxed. And you'll lose a lot of valuable deductions in retirement to offset those taxes. So a lot of people are going to end up retiring in a higher tax bracket than they were while they worked. Look for ways to become more tax efficient and put yourself in the best position possible. If you're not there now, then make sure you're working with a retirement specialist who can help you get there by making strategic moves each and every year to get more tax efficient. This is the ultimate goal of everyone, especially if you firmly believe, as we do, tax rates are going to be much higher in the future than they are now. Based on everything that's going on with this nation's debt and spending issues, all these things are going to come to a head at some point. And in all probability, it will come to a head in the form of higher taxes for all of us. The more tax efficient you can become now by making moves to put yourself in a more tax-free position, the better off you'll be, especially in retirement. So please, make sure you don't ignore taxes. Taxes can have a huge effect on your retirement years, and you have to make sure you've got a grip on them and have a plan in place to get more tax efficient. And this doesn't start at retirement. It starts now, even if you're 5, 10, 20 years away from retirement. Remember, this is not generally something that your tax preparer does. Your tax preparer simply does your tax return at the beginning of each year for the previous years. And most tax-efficient planning has to be done before the year ends because there's deadlines. So you need to make sure you're working with a retirement professional who can help make proper moves with your entire retirement plan to become more tax efficient. And that's not a person who does your taxes. There's a big, big difference there.
Yeah, and Doug, one thing I'll add to that is your tax preparer is simply looking at that year's taxes, as you said. They're not planning for the future. So it might actually come down to where you're making some changes to your portfolio that are not going to be tax advantageous for that specific year, but boy, are they going to be tax advantageous for 10 years down the road. Your regular CPA just doesn't have that kind of planning, doesn't do that kind of planning.
Yeah, we're not saying that's a bad thing on their part or a negative. That's just the way they're trained. Right.
Yeah.
Like I said before, we are retirement planning specialists, and we look down the road 5 and 10 years and try to make the corrections now before you make errors in 10 years from now.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, if this is sounding interesting to you, we have a terrific white paper on our website. It's called 5 Things Your Retirement Plan Must Have to Succeed. And if you're interested in that free download, you can find it at www.thewealthguardians.com. You just go under the media section along with other resources. Now, the paper discusses most of the concepts that we've covered today. And like I said, it's free for you to download. There's no cost, there's no obligation to it, just like there's no cost or no obligation for meeting with us. And if you want to call us to set that up, that's 336-391-3409. So as we close today's show, we want to emphasize that every situation is unique. And that's why we encourage you to sit down for that no cost, no obligation second opinion and review. Let us see if we can identify areas where we can offer additional options for creating retirement income and asset growth, along with more tax efficiency and Social Security optimization strategies. Let us show you how to retire the job and keep the paycheck. Again, our number is 336-391-3409 or online at thewealthguardians.com. Folks, thanks for listening, and we'll be here again next week on the Wealth Guardians Radio Show.